Proportional Response. Book 1, Chapter 19, Part 4. The Chamber's Controls. Duke Kasler took the forward seat in the Ventus ambassadorial platform at the top of the council chamber. He looked over his shoulders at his wife, Golna, on his left and Enibel on his right. The look on Enibel's face as he sat displayed palpable relief. Well, this is why I am here, is it not? To do the things which require boldness and courage which our future nephew has trouble with. Enibel caught his look and schooled his features, a slight blush of embarrassment tinting the man's hands. Duke threw him one of his signature superfast winks and was rewarded by some of the tension going out of the man's shoulders. That settled, he turned his attention back to the council chamber. All of the other ambassadors, save the Alton of course, had already taken their positions. Kasler wasn't a man to abuse his privilege much, but he hated waiting, and using the Ventus status as a founding species to be almost late to a session was an abuse of privilege he didn't mind indulging in. Other ambassadors noticed his arrival and began to grow restless. He'd made a habit of showing up a little late to sessions when he could get away with it, and even watching the feed from the chamber to make sure he showed up last. A few times over the last months he'd even forced Kilintar, and then Jalat, to wait on him to start a session by being late to something that required founder presence. On those occasions, the Zoltan in question had been waiting at the podium when he arrived, obviously annoyed that they had to wait on him, rather than the other way around, and just as obviously watching the clock with the intent of censuring him if he turned up sufficiently late. Twice he'd walked in with exactly 2 seconds to spare, just to tweak their noses. Petty, and I hate doing petty, but it put them off their game both times. This time, however, he had arrived an entire minute before the session, and the podium stood empty. A prime minister, or an acting prime minister, can be censured for being late when a founding member calls an all-required meeting. What is Jalat? The door to the prime minister's private office opened, and a moment later, a collective gasp sounded through the council chamber. Neither Jalat nor Kilintar stood at the door, but another Zoltan, who he had not only never seen before, but he felt sure had been in none of his briefings. He schooled his features as the unknown lizard advanced towards the podium, an oversized folder of some sort in his hands. But Euro had already started sending words to appear on his contacts. Euro, I don't recognize him either, love. Not offhand anyway, which means that I'd bet coins to droplets that he isn't a voter. I am, of course, searching all of our intel to find out just who and what he is, but facial recognition only goes so far, and the Zoltan have given us nothing about him. Kasler's eyes narrowed as the stranger fastidiously took his oversized folder out, laid it on the podium, and began to speak. I am Ambassador Gerfnan of the Alton Republic. The Lady Jalat has been recalled to Eskavik to assist with the defense of the ex-Alton Republic from the aggression of the human. Angry mutters swept through the council chamber, but Gerfnan ignored them. And, for her own safety, since the humans have made it clear that they intend to target the glorious leaders of our humble republic, in violation of their own much-touted rules of war, I might add. As such, no voter is on Sararo any longer. Indeed, most who are not actively involved in leading our militaries have withdrawn to the safety of SS Gavik. The man looked down his snout at Henry. I would also have it known to you, human, that I am, indeed, not a voter in the Republic. I am merely a humble ambassador, doing his best to serve the needs of his people and of the League. It will do your bloodthirsty kind no good to capture or kill me. Another will merely be sent in my place. Kasler began to reach for his microphone controls as annoyance built within him. I am the one who called this meeting, and this pissant little efficient is obviously trying to take the initiative away from me. Enibel shifted slightly in his seat, and Kasler stayed his hand. The man is right, he admitted to himself with a suppressed sigh. I am sure he will give me a better opportunity soon, and we may learn something useful if we let him prattle for a moment. The Zoltan fiddled with his folders for a moment, and Kasler felt sure that if the man wore glasses, he'd be adjusting them fastidiously as he continued. With everything that has happened the last few days, I felt that I should formally introduce myself first directly. rather than sending the normal introduction through regular channels. I realize that this is somewhat unorthodox and not strictly within protocol, but I believe you will all admit that these are unusual times we live in, and that it is not unreasonable to flex protocol a bit. That said, the standard notifications are being sent to your embassies as we speak. I hope you will all forgive me for not throwing the customary welcoming party as a new ambassador, but trying times and all that.
Gurfnan then stood straighter, put his hands on either side of the lectern, and leaned towards the mic a bit while he made eye contact with various ambassadors.
Now, since the formalities are out of the way, I would like to remind everyone that I am now the acting Prime Minister.
Enough. Kasler keyed his microphone.
Bullshit.
The word rang through the chamber, seeming to both echo and hang in the air. Gurfnan stopped speaking, ducked his snout a little, and looked up chidingly.
I have not recognized the esteemed Venter Duke, and I will note that these hallowed halls are hardly the place for that kind of profanity. No, Duke Kasler, if you do not wish to allow me to finish, I will be forced to censure you, and may, in my capacity as acting Prime Minister, even have to ban you from this chamber.
Kasler noted that the officious little toad seemed to catch his totally unimpressed look, because the lizard turned up the gain on his mic before continuing.
As I was trying to state,
Kasler turned the gain on his mic even higher. The Zoltan tried to cut his mic off, but Henry had given everyone the override codes for the chamber, so he just turned his mic back on and set the gain higher than previous limits would have allowed.
I'm completely out of order on several counts. First, this is not your meeting, and you have no business railroading me and trying to take it over. I called this meeting, and it is up to me to set the agenda.
He heard Golner and Enable stop typing and glanced down to check his display. Good.
Furthermore, you are absolutely not the acting Prime Minister. This council is not subject to the whims of your Republic's Assembly, and they do not get to just install whomever they wish as Prime Minister. I am forwarding the relevant passages of the Charter to everyone, but will sum a couple of relevant points simply. For an ambassador to take over for an injured Prime Minister, they have to be the formally recognized ambassador, minister's nation at the time of the injury. There are allowances for someone to take that ambassador's place, of course, but they must have been a member in good standing of this assembly, among other things, for that.
Gurfnan switched his mic off again and spoke.
Are you saying that you find me deficient in some way? Duke Felderen, I had always heard you were a reasonable man, and we haven't even met. It grieves me that you would.
Kasler switched his mic back on as Enable and Golner shut off all controls for the Prime Minister's podium.
Gurfnan, you are completely new here, and therefore not a member in good standing by definition. And there is a definition of that term. You will find it in the relevant charter passages I have forwarded.
Gurfnan got his podium turned back on and sneered slightly. Kasler raised his voice a little and spoke before the lizard could cut him off.
Everyone, please give me a hand in keeping this officious prat from railroading this session.
That seemed to be a popular idea. He saw several ambassadors adjunct and a few of the ambassadors themselves tapping at their consoles with wide grins. Then his own controls went dead. His eyebrows drew down as he swept his gaze over the chamber and found a few ambassadors scowling as they leaned over their consoles. Apparently the Zoltan have more allies than we thought, and enough that we still can't manage a no-confidence with override on an injury absence. Not yet. His controls came back to life and his platform undocked from the wall. He felt a moment of alarm, but Euro flashed a message on his contacts. Euro, I told you you'd want me in the chamber. This is a lot harder to do from here, but your platform is now isolated from interference by anyone's overrides. That is easier to do with you undocked, by the way. Of course, that also makes my life even harder, and would be easier if I was in there. And I still don't agree with your concern that everyone would see me do it. Everyone is too busy concentrating on their own little electronic battles. Kasler sighed. I'm going to have to make this up to her, and soon. Euro. Yes, you're going to have to make it up to me. I expect at least one night alone with whipped cream and chocolate. Damn, that woman can practically read my mind. She frightens me sometimes. He tried not to dwell on how he found that fact exciting. He directed his platform to move to the far wall of the chamber, but maintain its position near the ceiling, so that he could better see everyone as he spoke. He then looked at Golner, pointed to the Zoltan ambassador's platform and pointed at Gerfnen.
Now, to further the matter of your position with this assembly, Acting Ambassador Gerfnen, you have not been confirmed by this council as a legal representative yet. That matter may just be a formality, and it is true that this assembly does not have the right to block your appointment without bringing serious cause against you, but it is the law and the letter nonetheless. Furthermore, your attempt to walk into these chambers as an unknown and assert yourself as acting Prime Minister on nothing more than the word of the Zoltan Assembly could be seen as cause to deny your appointment, or at least hold an actual hearing.
Everyone stopped typing at their consoles and looked up at that. Kasler noted broad smiles, both predatory and jovial, from humanity's allies, and deep frowns, even a few shaking fists or shouts, from the exultant allies. Not many left who are neutral. Good. He held up a hand to forestall Gerfnen, who seemed about to try and shout him down.
I don't think that will really be necessary, however.
He noticed a look of mild disappointment on a few allies.
I think we can all chalk this unfortunate incident up to a miscommunication between you and your government, coupled by your lack of experience with this council and its rules. After all, you couldn't possibly have had more than a few days to prepare for taking this position. So, I, for one, am willing to overlook this entire little incident.
With Golner's usual adept timing, the Zoltan ambassador's platform floated to a stop by Gerfnen at just that moment.
Provided that you get out from behind that podium right now and take your proper place on your own platform.